The last can of formula was a hollow cylinder of failure. Alara stared at it, her knuckles white where she gripped the edge of the worn kitchen counter. Outside, the November wind rattled the single-pane window of her tiny apartment, a constant, mournful sound that mirrored the ache in her chest. In the other room, her 2-year-old son, Leo, coughed, a dry, rattling sound that sent a fresh wave of panic through her. His fever had been climbing all day. She checked her bank account on her phone for the 10th time, hoping for a miracle. $7.42. The number mocked her. Rent was a week overdue. The pink eviction notice a glaring scar on her refrigerator door. She had been so sure she would land that accounting job last week. The interview had gone perfectly, but the call never came. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Swallowing the bitter taste of defeat, she scrolled through her contacts, her thumb hovering over the one name she had sworn she would never ask for help again. Her sister, Clara. Their last conversation had been a year ago, ending in a flurry of accusations and resentment. Clara had called her irresponsible for having a child she couldn't support. The memory still stung. But Leo needed medicine. He needed food. Her own hunger was a dull, distant ache, easily ignored, but his needs were a roaring fire. With trembling fingers, she typed out the message, editing it over and over to drain every ounce of pride from it. Clara, it's me. I know it's been a while. I'm in a really bad spot. Leo is sick. Could you possibly lend me $50? Just for medicine and formula. I'll pay you back with my first check. I promise. She stared at the words, her vision blurring with tears of humiliation. She hit send before she could lose her nerve, tossing the phone onto the counter as if it were contaminated. A wave of nausea washed over her. Now, she just had to wait for the inevitable lecture, the judgment, the "I told you so." Across the city, in a glass-walled office 50 stories above the glittering streets, Damian Sterling stared at the same message. It had appeared on his private line, a number known only to his board of directors and his closest security personnel. He had been reviewing quarterly projections, the endless columns of numbers blurring into meaninglessness. He was surrounded by success, the sleek mahogany desk, the skyline unfurling before him, the weight of a billion-dollar empire resting on his shoulders. Yet his life felt as hollow as the formula can on Alara's counter. The text was clearly a mistake, a misdialed number. His first instinct was to delete it, to dismiss it as digital noise. But he read it again. Leo is sick. The name pierced through the carefully constructed armor around his heart. His own son, also named Leo, would have been 5 this year. The thought was a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. 3 years had passed since the accident, but the grief remained a phantom limb, an ache for a life that was stolen in an instant of screeching tires and shattering glass. He looked at the anonymous plea again. $50. To him, it was less than nothing, the cost of a rounding error in his company's daily revenue. To this stranger, it was everything. He could not save his own Leo, but maybe, just maybe, he could answer this prayer sent to the wrong number. It was a foolish, sentimental impulse, one his ruthless business persona would have scoffed at. But the man beneath the suit, the father who still woke from nightmares of a tiny hand slipping from his grasp, felt a pull he couldn't ignore. He forwarded the number to his head of security. Find the location this message was sent from. Now, the reply came in less than a minute. An address in a rundown part of the city he hadn't set foot in for years. He also had his team run a quick, discreet background check. Alara Vance. A single mother. An accounting degree from a state university. A string of temp jobs. A spotless record. A woman drowning. He stood, shrugging on his tailored coat. Cancel my evening, he told his executive assistant over the intercom. Something has come up. An hour later, Alara was startled by a firm knock on her apartment door. Her heart leaped. Clara. She wouldn't have come in person, would she? Wiping her tear-stained cheeks, she pulled the door open a few inches, peering through the gap. It was not her sister. A man stood in the dimly lit hallway, a man who looked utterly out of place. He was tall, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than her entire apartment's contents. His face was all sharp angles and controlled composure, but his eyes held a depth of sorrow that seemed strangely familiar. In one hand, he held 2 large grocery bags. In the other, a bouquet of white roses. Alara Vance, he asked, his voice a low, steady baritone. She stared, bewildered. Yes? Who are you? My name is Damian Sterling, he said. I believe you texted me by mistake. Mortification washed over her in a hot, sickening wave. She had sent her desperate, pathetic plea to a complete stranger. A rich stranger, by the looks of him. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. I am so sorry. I must have typed the number wrong. Please, just delete it. Forget it ever happened. She tried to close the door, but he held his ground. I brought these, he said, gesturing with the bags. Formula. Diapers. And a pediatrician recommended this for a child's fever. He pulled a bottle of children's medicine from one of the bags. And the roses. I wasn't sure what else to do. Alara was speechless. The sheer absurdity of the situation. A billionaire on her doorstep with roses and baby supplies because of a wrong number was too much to process. I can't accept this, she stammered, her pride rebelling. Please, he said, and for the first time, a crack appeared in his stoic facade. His gaze flickered past her into the apartment, where Leo let out another weak cough. Let me help. Please. The desperation in his voice mirrored her own. It disarmed her. Against her better judgment, she slowly opened the door. He stepped inside, his large frame seeming to shrink the already small room. He placed the bags on her counter, the colorful packaging of food and supplies a stark contrast to her bare shelves. Why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would you do this? He didn't look at her. Instead, he unpacked the groceries with an unnerving efficiency. I found your resume online, he said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. You have a degree in accounting. Impressive work history, despite the short-term contracts. She blinked. You looked up my resume? The unease returned, sharp and cold. This was moving too fast, getting too strange. I have an opening for a personal assistant. The work is demanding, the hours are long, but the salary is substantial. It comes with a full benefits package, health insurance, and a housing stipend, he stated, finally turning to face her. The job is yours if you want it. Alara felt the world tilt on its axis. A job. A real job. Health insurance. A housing stipend that could get her and Leo out of this crumbling apartment. It was a lifeline, a miracle delivered by a stranger who now seemed less like a savior and more like a puzzle she couldn't solve. Her suspicion warred with her desperation. I don't understand, she said. You don't know me. Why would you offer me a job? I have a good instinct for people, he replied smoothly. And I believe in creating opportunities. You start Monday. My driver will pick you up at 8-inch. He placed a business card on the counter next to a thick envelope. This is a signing bonus. To help you get settled. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Alara standing in a daze, surrounded by the scent of roses and the bewildering reality of her life having been irrevocably changed. The first few weeks were a whirlwind. The job was as demanding as he had promised. Damian Sterling was a precise, exacting boss, his mind always 5 steps ahead. He ran Sterling Industries with a quiet authority that commanded respect and, from some, fear. But with her, he was different. He was patient, considerate, and strangely protective. He ensured her hours allowed her to pick Leo up from the new, high-quality daycare he had arranged. The housing stipend was enough for a safe, beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. Her life was transformed. Leo was thriving, his cheeks rosy and full. They had food in the fridge, a warm home, and for the first time in years, Alara could breathe. But the unease never fully faded. Damian's kindness felt targeted. He would ask about Leo, his questions specific, his interest too keen. He once noticed a small scratch on her son's knee and had his personal physician call her that evening just to check in. It was too much. One evening, after a particularly long day finalizing a merger, she found him waiting for her by the car. He was holding a small, gift-wrapped box. For Leo, he said simply. I heard you mention his birthday is next week. It was a beautifully crafted wooden train set, the kind she had seen in expensive toy store windows and could only dream of affording. It was the final straw. Her suspicion, which had been simmering for weeks, boiled over. She didn't take the box. Damian, we need to talk. She led him to a small park nearby, the city lights twinkling around them. I am grateful for everything. You have saved me and my son. But I have to know why. This isn't just a job. This isn't just charity. What do you want from me? He looked away, his jaw tight. I told you, I saw potential. No. She cut him off, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and frustration. Don't lie to me. You know my son's favorite color. You knew he was allergic to peanuts before I ever told you. You arranged for the best pediatric specialist in the city to be his doctor. These are not the actions of a mere employer. It feels like you're watching us, like you're trying to orchestrate our lives. It scares me. He finally met her gaze, and the carefully controlled mask he wore every day crumbled. The raw, unguarded grief in his eyes was so profound it made her take an involuntary step back. You're right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's not just a job. He took a deep breath, the confession spilling out of him in a torrent of long-held pain. 3 years ago, my wife and I were in a car accident. She died instantly. My son. He held on for 3 days in the hospital. He paused, struggling for composure. His name was Leo. He was 2 years old. He loved wooden trains. His favorite color was blue, and he was deathly allergic to peanuts. Alara felt the air leave her body. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying, heartbreaking clarity. When your text came through, he continued, his voice cracking. A message from a stranger, a mother desperate to help her sick son named Leo. It felt like a ghost, like a sign. It was the first time in 3 years I felt something other than numb. Helping your Leo. It felt like a way to honor my son's memory, a way to do the things for him I never got the chance to. I know it's not logical. I know it's not fair to you, but it was the only thing that made sense. Her anger dissolved, replaced by a wave of overwhelming empathy. She saw him then not as a powerful billionaire, but as a grieving father, trapped in an endless loop of what-ifs. She reached out and, without thinking, placed her hand on his arm. Damien, she whispered. I'm so sorry. That night, the wall between them came down. Trust, born from shared vulnerability, began to take root. Their relationship shifted from employer and employee to something deeper, more fragile. They started having dinner together after work, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He was gentle and kind with Leo, who quickly grew to adore him. For the first time, Alara allowed herself to hope for a future she had never dared to imagine. But as their bond deepened, a shadow from Damien's past began to lengthen. Marcus Thorne, Damien's former business partner and rival, had been watching Sterling Industries, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He saw Alara as that opportunity. A single mother plucked from obscurity, given a high-level position. It was a weakness he could exploit. The attack was swift and brutal. One morning, Damien was summoned to an emergency board meeting. Marcus was there, a smug look on his face. He presented a file full of evidence, showing that confidential data about their upcoming tech launch had been leaked to a competitor. The digital trail, he claimed, led directly to Alara Vance's computer. She's a corporate spy, Damien, Marcus announced to the stunned board members. You brought this woman into our inner circle, and she betrayed you. Your sentimentality has compromised this entire company. When Damien told her, Alara felt the floor drop out from under her. That's impossible, she said, her mind reeling. I would never do that. Damien's expression was unyielding. I know, he said, his voice firm with a conviction that stunned her. He didn't doubt her for a second. Marcus framed you, and we are going to prove it. The threat forced them into a new kind of partnership. They spent the next 48 hours locked in his office, poring over network logs, security protocols, and financial records. His resources and her meticulous, detail-oriented accounting mind became a formidable weapon. She was no longer just an assistant. She was his equal, fighting not just for her reputation, but for the company and the man she was realizing she had fallen in love with. Late into the second night, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, she found it. A tiny anomaly she had flagged weeks ago, but had been told was a simple clerical error. A series of encrypted fund transfers, routed through offshore accounts, too small to trigger major alarms. They were disguised as payments to a shell corporation. This is it, she breathed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The payments line up perfectly with the dates of the data leaks. He wasn't selling the data. He was using the leaks to short your stock, then buying it back at a lower price through this shell company. He's not just trying for a takeover. He's stealing from you. Working together, they unraveled the entire scheme. The final piece of evidence was hidden in the shell company's incorporation documents. The sole signatory was Marcus Thorne. The next day, they walked into the reconvened board meeting together. Marcus began his presentation with smug confidence, detailing Alara's supposed betrayal. When he finished, Damien didn't argue. He simply projected the offshore account records and the incorporation documents onto the main screen. The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus's face went pale, his composure shattering. He was exposed, ruined. Security escorted him from the building, his threats and denials echoing down the hall. In the quiet aftermath, Damien turned to Alara, his eyes full of an emotion that made her heart race. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved my company." "We did it," she corrected him, her voice trembling slightly. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Alara, for 3 years, my world has been gray. You and Leo. You brought the color back. You've done more than save my company. You've saved me." He gently cupped her face in his hands. "I love you." Tears of relief and joy welled in her eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. And then he kissed her, a kiss that was a promise of a future she had never thought possible. 1 year later, the apartment was filled with laughter and the cheerful chaos of a 3-year-old's birthday party. Leo, his face smeared with chocolate cake, zoomed a wooden train across the floor. Alara watched from the doorway, her heart full. She was no longer just an employee at Sterling Industries. She was the chief financial officer, her skills finally recognized and valued. But her greatest title was mom, and her greatest joy was this little boy and the man who had become his world. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, watching his, "There, son, play. Happy looks good on you," he murmured in her ear. "It's all because of you," she said, leaning back against him. "No," he corrected gently. "It's because of a wrong number and a mother who would do anything for her child. You reminded me what it felt like to have a family." He turned her to face him, his expression serious but his eyes shining. He got down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Alara Vance, you are the strongest, most brilliant woman I have ever known. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, of course yes." He slipped the stunning diamond ring onto her finger before pulling out a second, smaller box. He called Leo over. "Hey, buddy, I have something for you." He opened the box to reveal a small, silver locket. "I have a question for you. Can I be your dad? For real, forever?" Leo's eyes went wide. He looked from the locket to Alara, who was smiling through her tears, and then back to Damien. He threw his little arms around Damien's neck. "My daddy," he squealed with delight. As Damien fastened the locket around Leo's neck, Alara looked at the two of them, her 2 Leos, one a memory that had sparked a miracle, the other a bright, beautiful future. She thought back to that desperate, humiliating moment, texting into the void for $50. She had been asking for help to survive one more day. She never could have imagined that a single, misdialed text would lead her here, to a life not just of survival, but of profound, breathtaking love, building a new family from the broken pieces of the past.